The wind howled across the barren prairie, carrying with it the scent of rain and the bitter memory of lost souls. The cowboy rode slow, his hat pulled low, eyes scanning the endless stretch of wilderness that had been his only companion for years. The sun was dying behind the hills, bleeding orange into the darkening sky when he saw it. Something lying beneath a crooked tree, a bundle of rags or maybe an animal left to rot. He dismounted, boots crunching on dry grass, and stepped closer, hand resting on his revolver out of habit. The bundle moved. A weak cough, a whisper of life, and then a voice so frail it nearly vanished in the wind. "Just kill me fast." He froze, breath caught in his throat. Kneeling, he pulled the coarse blanket aside and stumbled back in horror. A woman, no, a shadow of one, lay curled like a broken bird, her skin marked with bruises, her lips cracked, her eyes sunken but still burning with a strange, haunted light. The stench of neglect clung to her, and beneath the blanket her hands were tied, wrists chafed raw. She looked at him with the desperation of someone who had seen the edge of hell and come back to beg for the release of death. The cowboy swallowed hard, his calloused fingers twitching as the rain began to fall in thin, cold needles. "Who did this to you?" he muttered, but she only shook her head, a tear mixing with the mud on her cheek. That night he built a fire, gave her water drop by drop, tore the ropes from her wrists, and sat silent while the storm raged. In the silence he felt something stir in his chest, something he had buried long ago, when the world took from him more than it ever gave, mercy. Dawn broke with the cries of crows overhead. The woman was still alive, barely, her breathing shallow, her body trembling beneath the tattered blanket. He could ride away, leave her like the others would have, but the words she had spoken, the plea for a quick death, gnawed at him like a splinter in his soul. Somewhere beyond these plains, there were men responsible, shadows that left scars on her flesh and terror in her voice. He didn't know why yet, but he knew this. She would not die here, and he would not ride away, not this time. The prairie stretched endless and silent. As the cowboy rode through the gray dawn, the fragile woman wrapped in the torn blanket resting weakly before him on the saddle, her head barely lifting as the cold wind stung her face. Every hoofbeat echoed the weight of his decision. He could have left her to the vultures, to the silence of the wilderness, where no one asked questions and no one remembered names, but he had not. The image of her cracked, lips whispering, "Just kill me fast," haunted him with each mile. Her wrists still bore the scars of rough rope, and the bruises across her arms and shoulders told the story of cruelty even if her lips refused to. For hours neither spoke. He felt her shiver against his chest, a ghost of warmth that reminded him how close to death she still lingered. By midday they found an abandoned barn near the river bend, its roof half collapsed, its walls weathered by years of storms. He laid her gently on a pile of old hay, wrapped her tighter, and lit a fire with the last of his dry kindling. Outside, the land was quiet, but he could feel the echo of danger in the distance. Men who would do such things did not always leave loose ends. They hunted them, buried them, erased them. As the fire cracked, she stirred, eyes opening just enough to meet his. There was no trust there yet, only exhaustion and a fear so deep it was etched into her bones. He offered her a tin cup of warm water. Her hands trembled as she held it, a drop slipping down her chin. Hours passed before her voice returned, a whisper scraping the silence. "You should not have found me." He said nothing, only poked the fire and listened. "They will come," she said again, a little louder this time, her eyes darting toward the shadows that clung to the barn's corners. "And if they find you with me, they will not leave you breathing." His jaw tightened. He had faced rustlers, thieves, bounty hunters, and worse in his life. But the way she said it, like she had already seen the edge of their madness, made the air feel heavier. Night crept in once more, the wind rattling the broken boards like a warning. He leaned back against a beam, hand never far from the revolver at his hip. "I've got my own ghosts," he finally muttered, "and they've been trying to kill me for years. If yours want to turn, they'll have to stand in line." She didn't smile, but for the first time her eyes softened, as if somewhere beneath the bruises and the fear, a sliver of hope had survived. The firelight danced on her face, revealing the faint trace of who she might have been before the nightmare. Claimed her, young, strong, alive. As the hours stretched thin, he heard the distant cry of coyotes and the whisper of the river, and he knew that the real storm was still coming, somewhere out there. The men she feared were moving, and when they came, they would bring the truth with them, ugly, raw, and soaked in blood. He closed his eyes only for a moment. The hat pulled low over his brow, but sleep would not come easy. The land was holding its breath, and so was he. The river ran black under the moonlight, its surface trembling like the breath of the land holding on to a secret. The cowboy stood at the edge of the barn door, hat pulled low, eyes fixed on the horizon where shadows were moving. 3 riders, dark shapes against the fading starlight, coming steady and slow like the whisper of death itself. Behind him she stirred, clutching the blanket tighter as though the thin cloth could shield her from the nightmare that had come for her once and would come again. Her voice cracked the silence. "It's them," she whispered, and for the first time he heard her voice not as a plea for death, but as a memory of every scar, every scream she had survived. He turned, meeting her, eyes and something shifted in his chest, an unspoken promise. Not this time. The door creaked as the wind pressed against it, the smell of rain heavy in the air, the kind of storm that washed blood off the earth but never from a man's hands. He checked his revolver, 6 bullets, 1 life of his own he was willing to risk. As the riders approached, the barn seemed to shrink, the walls drawing closer like a coffin waiting to be nailed shut. He whispered, "Stay low," and stepped out into the cold. The first rider dismounted, a tall figure with a scar across, his jaw and a grin that didn't belong to a man with a soul. "We came for what's ours," the man said, his voice slick with cruelty. "She's marked. She's ours." The cowboy spat in the dust. "She ain't property." "Not while I breathe." Laughter echoed from the other 2 as they circled like wolves, their hands resting on their belts. The standoff stretched thin, the world holding its breath. Then it snapped. One of them drew first, and the night exploded with gunfire. The cowboy moved like the storm itself. 1 shot, 2 shots, the muzzle flash tearing holes in the dark. Pain seared his side as a bullet grazed him, but he didn't stop. The first man fell. The second stumbled back, clutching his throat. The third fled into the trees with the echo of vengeance in his curses. Silence returned like a ghost. He stood there, chest heaving, blood dripping down his ribs. The rain beginning to fall and wash the dust into red. Inside, she had crawled to the doorway, eyes wide with a mixture of terror and something new, freedom. He walked to her, knees threatening to give, and held out a trembling hand. "It's over," he said, though he knew it wasn't. Not truly, not yet. But for her, tonight, the nightmare had ended. She touched his hand, cold fingers brushing calloused skin, and for the first time her lips did not form a plea for death but a question trembling with fragile life. Why? He smiled faintly, rain running down his face. Because someone should have come sooner. The barn burned behind them as they left, the fire crackling high into the storm, a pyre for the ghosts that had hunted her. The dawn that followed was pale, weak, but it was dawn, and with it came the road, long, uncertain but theirs to ride. He didn't ask her name again. Some things were better given when a soul was ready to live. She leaned against him in the saddle, breath steady, eyes closed not from fear but from exhaustion that finally had a place to rest. The cowboy looked ahead to the horizon, the endless wild stretching out before them, and for the first time in years he didn't feel like a man running from his past, but one riding toward a future, one where her words might one day change from "just kill me fast" to something like hope. And you, writer of stories, if this journey stirred your heart, if you want more tales of the wild where darkness and dawn collide, subscribe now. Your support keeps these fires burning, keeps the stories alive, and makes sure no soul is ever left untold on the lonely trail.